Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braje Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braje Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Thank you all for coming to the Śrimad Bhāgavatam class. We're reading from Canto 4, Chapter 2, entitled Daksha Curses Lord Shiva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasan. Tato Jayamudirayet. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttamasloke. Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So, we're reading texts 11 to 13. So, I'll just read texts 11 and 12 and we can recite text 13 together. Esha me shishyatam prapto yanma duhitur agrahit pani vipragni mukata savitrae sadhuvat. Translation. He has already accepted himself as my subordinate by marrying my daughter in the presence of fire and brahmanas. He has married my daughter, who is equal to Gayatri, and has pretended to be just like an honest person. Purport. Daksha's statement that Lord Shiva pretended to be an honest person means that Shiva was dishonest because in spite of accepting the position of Daksha's son-in-law, he was not respectful to Daksha. Text 12. Grihidva mirga shavakshya pani marka talochana pratyutana bivadarhe vachyapya kritanochitam. Translation. He has eyes like a monkey's, yet he has married my daughter, whose eyes are just like those of a deer cub. Nevertheless, he did not stand up to receive me, nor did he think it fit to welcome me with sweet words. Text 13. So we can recite this together. Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Manine binasetave.
Manine binasetave.
Anichanyapyadam balam.
Anichanyapyadam balam.
Shudraye vo shatim giram.
Shudraye shatim giram.
Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Manine binasetave.
Manine binasetave.
Anichanapyadam balam.
Anichanyapyadam balam.
Sudraye vo shatim giram.
Shudraye shatim giram.
Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Manine binasetave.
Manine binasetave.
Anichanapyadam balam.
Anichanyapyadam balam.
Sudraye vo shatim giram.
Shudraye shatim giram. Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Lupta kriyaya shuchaye.
Manine binasetave.
Manine binasetave.
Anichanapyadam balam.
Anichanapyadam balam.
Shudraye vo shatim giram.
Shudraye vo shatim giram. Lupta kriyaya shuchaye. Manine binasetave. Aniccanapyadam balam Shudrayevo shatim giram Luptakriyaya suchaye Manine binnasetave Aniccanapyadam balam Shudrayevo shatim giram. Anyone else? Okay, word for word. Lupta kriyaya,
Lupta kriyaya,
not observing rules and regulations.
not observing rules and regulations.
Ashuchaye,
Ashuchaye,
impure.
impure.
Manine,
Manine,
proud.
proud.
Binnasetave,
Innasetave,
having broken all rules of civility. Anichan, not desiring. Api, although. Adam, handed over. Balam, my daughter. Shudraya, unto a Shudra. Iva, as. Ushatim Giram, the message of the Vedas. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I had no desire to give my daughter to this person who has broken all rules of civility. Because of not observing the required rules and regulations, he is impure. But I was obliged to hand over my daughter to him, just as one teaches the messages of the Vedas to a Shudra. Purport. A Shudra is forbidden to take lessons from the Vedas because a Shudra, due to his unclean habits, is not worthy to hear such instructions. This restriction, that unless one has acquired the Brahmanical qualifications, one should not read the Vedic literatures, is like the restriction that a law student should not enter a law college unless he has been graduated from all lower grades. According to the estimation of Daksha, Shiva was unclean in habits and not worthy to have the hand of his daughter, Sati, who was so enlightened, beautiful, and chaste. The word used in this connection is binnasetave, which refers to one who has broken all the regulations of good behavior by not following the Vedic principles. In other words, according to Daksha, the entire transaction of the marriage of his daughter with Shiva was not in order. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchatatpat Makam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya ivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Ratnagar Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prestali Bi Sevyamano Smarami. So, in context, we're continuing our reading of the pastime of Shiva and Daksha, and this is the part where Daksha is actually committing an offense to Lord Shiva. So, the backstory, as we've heard over the last few days, was that there's a great assembly of demigods, sages, and saints, and they're performing a sacrifice to pacify the universe. And Daksha is so highly respected, and he's the son of Lord Brahma. So when he entered the assembly, his bodily effulgence was so illuminating like the sun. So everyone naturally rose. However, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva didn't stand up. And it's known that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are superior to Daksha because they're the main deities of the universe. They're in charge of creation and destruction. But Daksha expected Lord Shiva to respect him because he is his son-in-law. So by accepting the position of being his son-in-law, he's actually accepting the position of being inferior. That's according to Daksha. So he immediately became furious when Lord Shiva didn't stand up to respect him and cursed him. He started insulting him in front of everyone and then cursed him not to get a share of the yagya. So it's clear that Daksha was overcome by anger. And what we learn in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verses 62 and 63, is that when we get angry, our intelligence gets lost. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibrama, smriti bhramsad buddhi nasho, buddhi nasat pranasyati. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So this is what happened to Daksha, and it's interesting because he got so angry and bewildered, and his intelligence was so lost that he actually also simultaneously insulted his own father, Lord Brahma, when he said that I was obliged to give my daughter to Lord Shiva. It was actually Lord Brahma who told him, who suggested to him to give his daughter. But by saying that he was obliged, it was as if it was against his will, and that almost insulting the intelligence of Lord Brahma and making it seem like he suggested something wrong to him and he was forced against his will. And in a later verse, it said that he actually referred to Lord Brahma as Paramestina, the spiritual master of the universe, not my father. He distanced himself from Lord Brahma by not taking him as his father. He says spiritual master of the universe, which is like a more formal relationship. So as we heard yesterday from Achyuta Mohan Prabhu, these verses can also be interpreted in a different way. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that there's something called Saraswati Vak, which is when you can interpret Sanskrit to mean something else based on how we break up the syllables, the sandhi. So like with Niyamagraha and Niyamagraha, they have two opposite meanings. The word Niyamagraha has two opposite meanings depending on how you break it up. It means either being attached to the rules and regulations of the Vedas not for the purpose of advancement, or to reject the rules and regulations and to act whimsically, but it's the same word. So some of the words in these verses can also be taken in that way. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, for text 11, he says, the words can also be taken as praise of Shiva. And that Daksha would be saying, until today, he has kept my bad behavior secret. Because he is omniscient, he's first to understand. Therefore, he did not stand up and welcome me. However, he has understood the qualities in my daughter equal to Savitri, Gayatri, whom he has married. What good behavior is this on my part? So this is more accurate, actually, the way Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has translated it. And text 13 can be translated as, the words can be taken as, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the words can be taken as praise. Daksha speaking. Because he is the very form of the Supreme Brahman, no rituals need to be performed. No one is cleaner than he is. He is not proud, doesn't break the rules. Seeing my own lack of qualification, I didn't want to give my daughter, but I gave her. I am unqualified like the Sudras who teach the Vedas. So, and this is more in line. And it's interesting how this last text 13 speaks about how the sudras are forbidden to take lessons from the Vedas. That actually makes us wonder, because Kalo Sudra Sambhava, everyone in Kali Yuga is born as a Sudra. So how is it that we can actually learn from the Vedas? But it's said that the Vedas here is referring to the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda specifically, which form the Shrutis of the Vedic literature. And what we study generally is the Puranas and the Itihasas, which are, the Itihasas are histories like Mahabharata and Ramayana, and Puranas are all the Puranas, including Bhagavat Purana, Śrimad Bhāgavatam, which we make the central focus of our life in Krishna consciousness. So, and those are the Smriti. So when it said that Sutra is not meant to study the Vedas, it's referring to the Shruti, not the Smriti. And so it's actually allowed for Sudras to have access to the Puranas. And Jiva Goswami comments that all these Vedic mantras, all this literature are actually personalities. It's like how the Maha Mantra is a personality. It's not just words. So the Vedic literatures, all of these, the Shrutis and Smritis, are all personalities. And it said that the Smriti mantras are more merciful. And that's why they allow the Sudras to chant them. Whereas the Shruti mantras actually get afraid and run away when Sudras are trying to access them. So that's what Jiva Goswami says. But we also know that our qualification is by, our varna is determined by qualification, not by birth. We are all actually born as Sudras, maybe lower than Sudras in Kali Yuga. But if we purify ourselves and develop the qualities of a Brahmana, then we can actually, then we are actually able to access the Vedas. Like, for instance, the Gayatri mantras are from the Vedas. It's from the Shruti, which we're not actually able to access. But it's understood that when someone receives Brahman initiation, they're actually acting as a Brahmana. They're developing the qualities of a Brahmana, and that's how our spiritual masters mercifully give us these mantras. But there's also the statement that they cannot be chanted when you're unclean. We have to be clean. We have to observe the proper behavior of a Brahmin, mainly cleanliness and all the other good qualities that Brahmins are meant to have. So Daksha thought that Shiva was unclean and unqualified to accept his daughter, and that he was inferior to Daksha. He expected respect and couldn't tolerate it when he didn't receive it, which is the opposite of what we're actually taught as devotees, amanina manadena. That's like the central slogan of our lives as devotees, that we should be offering all respects to others and not expecting any respect. But here we see Daksha expected so much respect and got so angry when he didn't receive it. So, and then got so critical. So I found this amazing article written by a devotee called Sankirtan Das about discussing where this tendency to criticize and cause offenses comes from. And actually, it's coincidentally, Harivilas Prabhu was talking about this on Saturday. He did a seminar on the perils of fault finding for our Bhakti School outreach initiative. And he was speaking mainly about the pastime of Ramachandra Puri, who offended his spiritual master and then just progressed to offend everyone. And he referenced a seminar by Ravindra Swarup Prabhu called Cure of Souls, where this whole psychology is analyzed, this like spiritual psychology of how we end up becoming offensive in the first place. Like where does this fault-finding mentality come from? What causes it? And it's based on a book that Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, I guess, studied by, I forgot the name and the author of that book, but the author actually spent some time in like a mental health facility amongst people who were mentally disturbed, and he identified that there's two types of mental disturbance. One is that, yes, chemically something's wrong in the brain, and you need help via medicines and things. But then another type of mental disturbance is actually more like a spiritual disturbance caused by a sense of personal failure and not being able to process it properly. And that's what this whole seminar, Cure of Souls, is about. I haven't listened to it, but I'm definitely going to, because just the summary of hearing about it was so interesting. And I felt like it was coming up in my life multiple times through Hari Vilas Prabhu and now through this article. It just kind of came. So I took it as Krishna's sign that I should speak on it, but more importantly, take it like internally into my life. So the summary of it is that in spiritual life, and just in life in general, but for us in spiritual life particularly, we have very high ideals and goals. And when we're not able to live up to those very high ideals and goals of what we should be, how we should be, the qualities we should have, then we have a personal sense of failure. And there's different ways to respond to this sense of failure according to the three modes of material nature. So in ignorance, you get bewildered and become delusional and kind of distance yourself from reality. And then in the mode of passion, there's concealment, which is what we're going to speak about, what Daksha was trying to do. So concealment leads to fault finding, it leads to criticizing, and one interesting thing he mentioned is that because you're not able to live up to the big ideals, you take something small that you can do really well and overemphasize its importance and make it seem like this is the essence. And Hari Vilas gave a really good example. He said, like he knew somebody who took it that your spiritual advancement is determined by whether or not you wear devotional attire everywhere you go. So he took it that people who wear devotional attire everywhere, they're like Pakka devotees, And anyone who doesn't, it's like not important. But this devotee was doing so many wrong things, stealing money, doing, so many big things. He couldn't follow himself, but he overemphasized this one small, like insignificant thing almost. So, and then in the context of Ramachandra Puri, Hari Vilas Prabhu was saying that, so he offended his guru by trying to correct his guru. And then when he got rejected, he got rejected by his guru, but also the community rejected him because they knew of this happening, like what offense he committed. And that personal sense of failure and rejection is what he couldn't take. And because he tried to conceal it, he tried to hide and act like he's still exalted, he's still using his reputation of being a disciple of Madhavendra Puri and walking around and acting like he's superior. So that caused him to just get more and more and more puffed up. And then he also became obsessed with something small, like how much people are eating, to determine whether or not they're spiritually advanced, which is not really the determining factor, but he took that to be like everything. And that's why he started criticizing and fault finding based on how much are you eating, how much is this person eating, and became obsessed with it. But we can see that because he was rejected by his guru and by the whole community, so he just couldn't face the fact, he couldn't accept it. And then therefore, he became a chronic fault finder. Someone who's always, because once we fault find, it just becomes easier and easier and easier to fault find the next time, and then it grows and grows. So in the same way, Daksha misunderstood his own position greatly. He couldn't, and then he got so angry, and then he couldn't understand that mistake that he made of publicly criticizing Lord Shiva. And then when all the sages were telling him to, were trying to pacify him and telling him to stay and everything, he couldn't even take good advice from the sages because he was so puffed up by his position. So it shows that there was no humility and there was denial, And then he progressed to do these grand yagyas, to hide his failure. That's what we sometimes do when we're failing in one thing. We try to overcompensate in something else just to seem like a good devotee, So he's doing these grand yagyas just to show like I'm still important, I'm still superior. And he was a Prajapati, assigned to populate the universe. So although this hiding, concealment, is what became detrimental to his daughter, because she couldn't take it. She ended up committing suicide. And even then, he didn't have the sense to stop her because he was hiding. He was so puffed up by being right. Like, he was refusing to admit a mistake, apologize, rectify the situation. So he was looking at Lord Shiva through material vision, not spiritual vision. And even though it said, in so many previous verses, it said that Lord Shiva is the best of the gentle, the spiritual master of the whole world, and free from enmity and peace, and he's peaceful. So despite all these good qualities that everybody could see, Daksha still felt the need to criticize him. He couldn't see his own position clearly, nor anybody else's. So we may think this pastime is a little bit extreme, When will we do this, where we're sitting in front of a whole audience and we just start criticizing and yelling and causing a disturbance to everyone? We have something in our mind that stops us from doing that, right? But we actually have, sometimes when we criticize, it's usually behind someone's back, which we think is better, but it's really not. But we actually do have a wide audience. We have our social media, we have our WhatsApp groups, and we have all these audiences where we have the opportunity to criticize. And sometimes we take that opportunity. So I saw this quote once that said, sometimes social media becomes like a Daksha Yagya because of how people just freely criticize each other. And it's easier because it's impersonal. You're not looking at anybody face to face, so you can just say anything online. But if someone was in front of you, it would be a lot scarier. Which is why it's interesting that Daksha was confidently, criticizing and thinking that he's doing the right thing, telling people, I am not speaking out of envy, I'm speaking about the manner of gentle persons. And it is completely hypocritical. So I actually appreciate Vaisheshika Prabhu at initiations when he says, after the 4 regulative principles, he says, please don't criticize devotees, especially on social media. That's it's a protecting force. You take it like an initiation vow that this is for my spiritual master to not do this. It makes a difference. So, that's how you can respond to our personal sense of failure in the mode of passion. But in the mode of goodness, the way to respond to it is by frankness, honesty, correction. So if we're frank, like if Daksha was frank and just understood, I'm actually not superior to Lord Shiva, then he'd be able to be humble. He'd take the humble position. If he was, when my spiritual master, Kadamba Maharaj, says that when we are honest, we can be humble. It's hard to be humble without honesty, and if you're struggling to be humble, then just be honest. And we will realize, I'm not actually anybody. I'm nobody great. I'm not superior to anyone. So when we're humble, we can actually see with spiritual vision that others are superior. And this is actually what happened later with Daksha, after his head was replaced with the head of the goat. Then he could suddenly see everything clearly, and suddenly he repented and glorified Lord Shiva, and he could see everything as it was, and he actually became happy. We can see that when we're puffed up, when we have all these expectations of respect, we're not actually happy because we're always looking for something from the world. But when we can take our humble position and just acknowledge who we are, where we are, then we can just be peaceful and think, oh, okay, I'm the servant of everyone. Even when we are actually senior to people, it's easier to just be humble and just think, okay, I'm your servant, than to exert, like, I'm senior to you, you should respect me, because that's not, if you have to demand respect, you don't have it, Respect is something that is earned, it happens on its own. If someone's genuinely inspired by you, they will naturally respect you. It shouldn't be that you have to go call out, I'm senior, everyone should respect me. So that's Daksha's mood here, but the fact is he's not even senior to Shiva, but he feels like he is, and therefore he's demanding this respect. So this point of being honest about who we are and where we're at, it's a big part of spiritual life because it gives us the opportunity to grow. When we admit that we are at a lower position than where we want to be, then we have the opportunity to get there, to grow and get there. If we think we're there, then we won't endeavor to go anywhere. We'll think, I'm there. I don't have to change. I don't have to do anything. It's like if you're taking a trip, if you're trying to go from New York to California, but you think you're already in California, then you're not going to get on the plane, right? Because you think I'm there. So in the same way, just this ability to be honest with ourselves helps us to grow. It shows us where we need to grow. And how do we admit that we're not as great as we thought we were, that we want to be? It's through feedback. It comes from introspection ourselves, like we can know many things about ourselves, but a lot of the time it's through the feedback of those closest to us, from seniors, from our peers. We'll realize that, oh, I'm actually doing something that's harmful. I'm being interpreted in a different way, or this is what I'm giving off to the world, and maybe I need to rethink the way I'm doing everything. So what I found, and I know this from personal experience, that it's very difficult for me to receive feedback. So it's an area I have to grow in. But what I've learned is that growth in spiritual life is directly proportionate to how willing we are to receive feedback. And if we're unable to receive feedback, then no matter how much spiritual activity we do, there'll always be something missing. There'll always be these blocks and barriers in our spiritual life that we're not able to cross, just because it'll be the same lesson that'll keep coming up over and over again until we learn it. So sometimes just being able to receive the feedback would help us a lot. So, and we see this in our lives, like we may try to do extra huge amounts of service or huge amounts of sadhana and study just to make ourselves feel like we're progressing, just to avoid the one big block that I'm not actually able to get through because I can't receive feedback, I can't improve in this way. But instead of doing that, I'm going to just do mountains of other Krishna conscious activity and avoid it. So there is value to that, in the sense that all our spiritual activity does purify our heart. It does, expand our taste, expand our Krishna consciousness, and then we're able to, naturally all our bad qualities will disappear. That's the process. So there is value in it, but we cannot do one and not the other. We can't just focus only on our spiritual life to the exclusion of introspection and actually working on ourselves. We need to, those two go side by side. We need to simultaneously dedicate ourselves to our devotional service, trusting that it will purify us and make our hearts pure and filled with love for Krishna. But we also need to make a concerted effort to improve and to introspect, to receive the feedback and transform our hearts from our spiritual practice. Those two have to be aligned with each other. Otherwise, something will be missing. And then I heard a very senior devotee in South Africa say that sometimes we don't know why we've been stuck for so many years. Like, we could be practicing Krishna consciousness for like 20, 30, 40 years, but we'll feel stuck because he knows people who are going through that. This devotee was telling me that he knows so many people who are just stuck, and they're continuing. Like, every day they do some service, every week they're at the temple, they're doing big things, but they're not progressing past a certain point just because they're not honest with themselves in some way. So the cost of not doing this, of not introspecting, not taking feedback, is that we commit Vaishnava aparad. And we've been discussing over the last few weeks about Vaishnava aparad and how damaging it is to our spiritual lives. There's a description that Vaishnava aparad is like a mad elephant, It's uncontrollable. It can destroy a whole garden. So we are cultivating our bhakti kripa, and it's growing, and it's very delicate creeper. It's not strong yet. It's very delicate, so we need to protect it and cultivate it very carefully. But a mad elephant will just come and rip it out and just destroy everything. So I've heard from Jayadvaita Swami in a few classes, he mentioned this, that it's like, the analogy is like our spiritual life is like a bank account. You know, so we have on the material plane, whatever we accrue, it gets lost, right? But on the spiritual plane, whatever service we do, whatever devotional activity we do, there's actually no loss or diminution, as we know from Bhagavad Gita. So there's no way to lose our spiritual credit. Everything we do in our spiritual life just accrues in the bank account. There's no way to diminish it. But it said that Vaishnava Aparad is like freezing the account. It's like we're not able to access it. It's still there. It's not like it's going to destroy it and diminish it or withdraw from it, but we're not able to access it because the account is frozen. So it's as good as not having the account. You know, that's what Vaishnava Aparad is like. And we see that we're not able to access, like practically from personal experience, I know that when we've committed offenses to devotees, we're unable to access the wealth of our spiritual life, the jewels of our spiritual practice, which is the taste we have. You know, we lose taste. We're not able to feel the same sense of enthusiasm and enlivenment when we're seeing the deities, when we're reading, when we're chanting, when we're hearing. We lose enthusiasm, we lose taste, and taste is what makes everything move. Without taste, we're not going to survive in Krishna consciousness. I mean, it's not that we have to wait for the platform of ruchi. Right now, we do have glimpses of some taste of something. So that's what's keeping us going in Krishna consciousness. Without that, if we lose that, we won't be able to survive. We won't practice out of duty forever. Duty is something you can do for a time being, but not forever. So we need that taste. We're dependent on that taste for our spiritual practice. And then, as Achyuta Mohan Prabhu mentioned yesterday, material desires develop. Because when we're not experiencing happiness from Krishna consciousness, we want to experience happiness from something, and then we'll go to material desires. So it's extremely dangerous to commit Vaishnava Aparad. I'm saying this for myself mostly, because it's not like I'm here speaking like some authority. I'm just speaking from the scripture. We all do it. We honestly, we know we commit offenses, and it's something we need to stop. There's this verse that I found that a devotee shared that says, even though one may attain great heights in life, and even though one may hold the Lord very close to one's heart, one will certainly fall if one disregards and hurts the devotees who are surrendered to the Lord. It's from the Bhagavad Vyanjanam. And that's very real. You know, even though one may attain great heights in life, and even though one may hold the Lord very close to one's heart, one will certainly fall if one disregards and hurts the devotees who are surrendered to the Lord. So this is it's actually more important to maintain good Vaishnava relationships than it is, in one sense, to avoid the four sinful activities. Because when you break the four regulative principles, then it's sins. You know, you get reactions for it. You get sinful reactions. But when we commit Vaishnava Aparad, that's worse actually than getting sinful reactions. Yeah, because see, when we break the regulative principles, we can easily rectify ourselves by chanting and by continuing in our devotional service. That's the process. We just continue. But by committing offenses, we're not able to continue in many ways. So, and we even hear that, like in severe cases, when we commit offenses, sometimes Krishna kicks us out from the sangha of devotees. You know, something will happen. But if it's continued, then somehow Krishna will make an arrangement such that we leave the association of the devotees. And it may even be our choice. It's not that they're going to reject us, because, I mean, devotees are tolerant. But it will be our choice. We will think, I'm leaving, and I'm justified in leaving. You know, I don't need them. And then that's detrimental for our spiritual life, because 90% of our spiritual advancement is dependent on association. So Vaishnava etiquette, as mentioned by Achyuta Mohan Prabhu yesterday, is that's that protector we have that protects our community, it protects our spiritual life. And that's why it's vital that everyone is aware of Vaishnava etiquette and it's taught Vaishnava etiquette. And many principles in Vaishnava etiquette may feel forced or it may feel like unnatural, and we're all individual living entities. We want to be free. We just want to be the way we are, And we bring our cultural conditioning and whatever we come with to Krishna consciousness, and that feels natural to us. So we just want to, be free. And following Vaishnava etiquette feels very mechanical and unnatural, but it actually protects us from destroying our spiritual lives. And it's also a way for good habits to form. It's something it's a practice. So Lord Chaitanya teaches us about Vaishnava etiquette and how much he appreciated it. Even though Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful incarnation and he just distributes love of Godhead freely, to anyone, the lowest, the most fallen, he actually really deeply appreciates Vaishnava etiquette. And we see that in this pastime by Sanatana Goswami, when Sanatana Goswami was sick. His body was diseased, and Lord Chaitanya called him, but he felt like he couldn't walk past the Jagannath temple, past the lion gates, because he's from a Muslim family, and he served the Muslim government, and then he not from a Muslim family, but he was as good as a Muslim because he was serving the government, and they were committing so many sinful activities. So and also his body was contaminated with this disease, so he didn't want to walk past the gate, because in case one of the servants of the Lord there, the pujaris, would touch him or something would happen. He didn't want to contaminate anyone. So he walked on the path of the sand, which was very hot. And Lord Chaitanya asked him, "How did you come?" And then he said that it's because, he said he walked on the sand, and then Lord Chaitanya said, "But it's so hot, why didn't you walk past the gate, the other route?" And he says, "No, I didn't want to do that because I would contaminate the atmosphere." And then Lord Chaitanya said, "My dear Sanatan, although you are the deliverer of the entire universe, and although even the demigods and great saints are purified by touching you, it is the characteristic of a devotee to observe and protect the Vaishnava etiquette. Maintenance of the Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of a devotee." And then he says, "If one transgresses the laws of etiquette, people make fun of him, and thus he is vanquished in both this world and the next. By observing the etiquette, you have satisfied my mind. Who else but you could show this example?" And later, when Sanatana Goswami, and then Lord Chaitanya embraced him, and Sanatana Goswami was so embarrassed, like all this disease from my body is like oozing out and touching Lord Chaitanya. And then he didn't know what to do, but he thought he has to leave Jagannath Puri, because otherwise the Lord will, embrace him, and he just felt so embarrassed. So he told Jagannatha Pandit this incident, and Jagannatha Pandit told him, "Oh, you can go back to Vrindavan." So then Sanatana Goswami told Lord Chaitanya, "I will go back to Vrindavan. Please give me permission to leave, because Jagannatha Pandit has suggested this." And then Lord Chaitanya got very angry and chastised Jagannatha Pandit. And it was interesting because Sanatana Goswami was actually sad that he was not being chastised. He gets so much respect from Lord Chaitanya, but Jagannatha Pandit gets chastised, which means they're closer, they're more intimate, So he was saying, "Oh, you're giving him this close personal association by chastising him, but me, you only give me respect, you're keeping me distant." And then Lord Chaitanya said, "My dear Sanatan, please do not think that Jagadananda is more dear to me than you. However, I cannot tolerate transgressions of the standard etiquette." Because Jagadananda Pandit had instructed him, but he was actually considered junior to Sanatana Goswami, but he's instructing him. And that's what Lord Chaitanya couldn't tolerate. He said, "Even I come to you, Sanatan, for advice. So who is Jagadananda Pandit to instruct you? If I'm coming to you for advice, you're fit to instruct him." So he just didn't want that Vaishnava etiquette to be upset. So Sanatana Goswami was like the emblem of Vaishnava etiquette, and that's why he's so exalted. And the 6 Goswamis we hear are Dhira Dhira Janapriyo Priyakaro, Nirmacharo Pujito. They're popular both with the envious, they're popular both with the gentle and the ruffians because they're not envious of anyone. So so following this Vaishnava etiquette gives you exalted quality. It frees you from this contamination of envy, which is what Daksha had towards Lord Shiva, and that's why he committed so many offenses, and that's what we're full of, and that's why we commit offenses also. And we see at the beginning of that chapter of Lord Chaitanya and Sanatana Goswami, when Lord Chaitanya invited Sanatana Goswami and introduced him to all the exalted devotees there, it said that the Lord asked Sanatana Goswami to offer obeisances to all the devotees in a way that befitted each one. Thus he introduced Sanatana Goswami to them all, just to make him an object of their mercy. Sanatana Goswami was dear to everyone because of his exalted qualities and learning. Suitably, therefore, they bestowed upon him mercy, friendship, and honor. So those who were junior to him honored him when they received him. Those who were equals received him with friendship. And those who were senior gave him their mercy. Because of his exalted qualities and his humility, he was able to receive the mercy of the devotees. So favorable Vaishnava dealings is actually really beneficial for our spiritual lives. It can give us so much because the Vaishnavas bestow auspiciousness and blessings on us when we deal favorably with them. And conversely, when we're unfavorably interacting with Vaishnavas, then they wouldn't want to, they would withhold their blessings naturally. They won't want to be anywhere near us, and then that destroys our taste and enthusiasm for our spiritual lives. So that's what I wanted to speak about, and that's what happened here with this pastime. And only at the end, when Daksha could honestly understand his position and glorify Lord Shiva as his senior, then was he happy, and then was everything peaceful and pacified. So our lesson is, don't wait for your head to be cut off before we become honest and accept our shortcomings and accept our position of being servants of Krishna and all the devotees. So I'll end there. If there's any comments, questions, corrections, any feedback.
First chance, otherwise I'll take it.
I just thank you for making so many nice points. Just wait, maybe after I hear from comments can make a contribution.
I really liked how you were saying how there's our internal kind of dissection of ourselves as well as doing our service, and we kind of need both to purify ourselves. It reminded me of a thing another day. One thing someone said, "Oh, if we just surrender to Krishna and whatever he brings us, then we should just depend on that." And then I was also thinking, well, he also gave us our intelligence so that we can properly, in terms of diet, the question of diet. Oh, we should just accept whatever is there. Krishna also gave us the intelligence to properly choose what's best for our health. So similarly, we do our service and that purifies us, but part of that purification is Krishna actually empowers our intelligence. Buddhi yoga. If you what was it? Satatam. No. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam kriti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti. So Krishna empowers our intelligence to block all these things, if people are just on the same level for so long. And I have a stump the Swami question. So, it seems like this is like a...
Save it for Hadai tomorrow.
Well, anyways, it's a good thing to think about.
Actually, it's good. Hadai can continue.
Yeah, all right. Hadai, if you can answer it, then
I think
Okay,
one of
so-
the days. Sorry.
So we've heard that in Upadeshamrita, the highest devotee is one who doesn't have the propensity to criticize others. But we also know that the devotees need to, a sadhu is known as one who cuts. I think everyone would agree Prabhupada's an example of the highest devotee, but many times he has to say things that are cutting and could maybe be construed as criticism. And so it seems like this catch-22, it's like we're also trying to become devotees. So where is the line? Like, we don't want to criticize anyone and remain humble, but then where is the line drawn when something needs to be addressed and, it's like we can't just be mum the whole time. Like, sometimes a sadhu actually does say something, so it seems counterintuitive. What are your thoughts on that?
My initial thoughts on this when you started asking it were that it depends on your intention. Like Srila Prabhupada or a pure devotee who cuts, their intention is pure and it's to rectify and correct. There's not one tinge of them trying to lord it over, or be superior, or seem like I'm better than you. But yet when we do that, we may think, oh, I'm correcting someone. I need to say this because I need to improve them for their spiritual life. But there's this tinge of us, because of our material conditioning, it's either small or big, that we actually want to seem superior. We actually like going and putting someone in their place and correcting them. So that's the first point I wanted to make about intention. And it's for us to really, really dissect ourselves. And I've noticed with myself, like I would initially do that, like where I want to like help someone along. But then when I can see that they're not taking it, I realize it's because, one of the reasons, it could be that they just can't receive feedback, but then one of the reasons could be because my intention is not pure, like I still think I'm superior and I'm trying to instruct them, and then I just step away, I just walk away, I say, this is not my duty. And then that's the second point, is it our duty? So for a manager or someone in charge of something, it is their duty to correct. Somehow they're in a position where they're in charge of the service or progress of others, and therefore it is their duty that if they see something wrong, the duty is to correct it. Of course, from a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, it will come out in the right way. Like so many devotees say that when Prabhupada corrected and chastised, that was the greatest nectar. I know Jayadvaita Swami says that he loved being chastised by Srila Prabhupada because it was the greatest nectar, because you felt that care and love and personal protection from Prabhupada. But sometimes if we're not on that level of being pure, sometimes if we're just doing it, even as a duty, it can come across wrong. It could come across like hurtful or critical. So it's very important to manage that it could be your duty. And therefore, if it is your duty, it's still important to do it the right way. And there is guidelines about that, like correction should be offered in private, and it should be based on a personal relationship. And one has to be senior, and of course we're taking it for granted that it's the duty. If it's someone directly in charge of you, then it is their duty. They're probably going to be senior, but it comes from that relationship and doing it in private and how they're doing it, in a non-judgmental way, but in a way genuinely to help you. So if it's your duty, then we have to follow the austerities of speech in how we interact with people to correct them. And sometimes if it's not your duty, but you notice that something does need to be corrected in someone else, then the best way is to speak to their senior, like the person that they would actually respect or listen to. And then that person can decide whether this is something to address now or later, or how to do it. Like for instance, a spiritual master, they know where the disciple is at. So if they receive a complaint about the disciple in doing something, they may think, okay, this is where they're at right now, so I'm just going to wait it out, and this is not too severe. If it is very severe, they may say, actually, I need to correct this immediately, but they'll do it in the right way such that the disciple can take it. Or they may it may be emergency, okay, they need it harshly because it has to change right now, Or they may just let the process of Krishna consciousness purify it. So it's those decisions that have to be made. I know personally I had experience of this just at my job. I had mentees under me. I was a mentor for software development, and so basically teaching people straight out of college how to like function in the work environment as a software developer. And I used to get so fried out by this one person. And he used to actually speak to me a lot about Krishna consciousness and ask me questions. I used to do a lot of like preaching to him and things. And we developed like a friendship in that like mentor-mentee relationship. But there was more, not just work. We used to speak about Krishna consciousness too. But I used to get so annoyed with him at work because he was really, really bad at his job. And then one day I just told him like straightforwardly, you know, like all the things he needs to change about himself, like to basically be employable, to like function in the work environment. And I thought, you know, oh, I ruined it now. He's not going to want to be a devotee. He's not going to want to have anything to do with me. But he actually came and said, thank you so much. Like, I could tell that from the way you spoke that you really care about me, because you care so much that you want me to progress and you want me to improve. And then I realized, yeah, maybe I do, you know, like, because I cared enough to preach to him, you know, we had a friendship. And that's when I realized, like, he could see my intention over what I was actually saying. So sometimes that happens, that if your intention is right, then they can receive it correctly. So it's all these things. Hadai, do you have comments about it? Oh, okay.
I have breakfast, we can continue.
It's 9:01. Okay. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.